Do you control your decisions or do your bacteria? The surprising power of the microbiome over your brain? Hello, curious minds. Ready for a journey that could forever change the way you see yourself? Today, we're going to talk about one of the craziest questions we can ask ourselves. Who's at the wheel of your life? You or the trillions of microscopic beings living inside you? I propose a descent, a journey through 5 levels of knowledge about your microbiome. And I promise you that by the end, your idea of yourself will have been completely transformed. Let's begin. Okay, level 1, the surface we all know. You've probably heard that bacteria live in your gut. And what do? Well, most famously, they help you digest food. They're like little personal chefs that break down that salad or pizza into smaller parts your body can use. Simple, useful, and something we've all heard in biology class. But they don't just work on digestion. Think about your mood. Have you ever felt irritable or sad without a clear reason? Well, there's growing talk that these gut bacteria have something to do with it. It's that strange connection between feeling sick to your stomach and suddenly having your whole day look gray. It's a fact that has become popular. A happy gut, a happy mind. And this is not new. This relationship is a love story millions of years old. Since the first humans, we have evolved alongside these microbes. They needed us for a warm home and constant food, and we needed them to survive. It's as if we signed an ancient contract. You help me digest roots and berries, and I'll give you a place to live. An ancestral alliance. And the last basic point, the immune system. Your bacteria are like the personal trainers of your defenses. They teach them to distinguish between a friend and an enemy, between simple pollen and a dangerous virus. But have you ever stopped to think why we've entrusted such a great responsibility, that of our own safety, to beings that aren't even us? So there you have it. Digestion, mood, an evolutionary alliance, and defense training. This is level 1. It's the tip of the iceberg, what almost everyone knows or has heard about the microbiome at some point. It's the foundation, the starting point, but the truth is much, much deeper. But if this is what we see on the surface, what secret engines are driving it underneath? How is it possible that something in your gut affects your thoughts? It's time to dive in. Welcome to level 2. Here's the first big revelation. Remember we said bacteria affect your mood? Well, it's not magic. It turns out your gut bacteria are small factories for neurotransmitters. What's a neurotransmitter? Imagine it as your brain's chemical messengers. Serotonin, for example, is the messenger of happiness and well-being. And guess what? More than 90% of the serotonin in your body isn't produced in your brain, but in your gut, with the direct help of your bacteria. And these messages aren't sent randomly. There's an invisible rule that governs everything, the so-called gut-brain axis. Think of it as a two-way information highway. What happens in your brain, like stress, goes down and affects your bacteria. And what happens in your gut, like inflammation or the chemical messages we just saw, goes up and affects your brain. It's like when you have a bad day at work and come home in a bad mood. That highway works the same way, but between your mind and your gut. Now let's talk about your cravings. Have you ever had an irresistible urge to eat something sweet or greasy? You might think it's your decision, but a cognitive bias comes into play here. A cognitive bias is like a factory defect in our brain that makes us think irrationally. In this case, the defect is rationalization. Your microbes, which feed on sugar, can send signals asking for more. And your brain, instead of saying my bacteria are asking for it, invents a story. I've had a tough day. I deserve this cake. You rationalize an impulse that perhaps wasn't yours in the first place. And this connection has become much more complicated over time. Imagine our hunter-gatherer ancestors. They ate dozens of different plants, roots, and meats every week, feeding a super diverse bacterial community. Then came agriculture, and our diet narrowed to just a few grains. And today, with ultra-processed foods, we sometimes feed our bacteria a very boring and repetitive menu. It's as if we've turned a vibrant rainforest into a perfectly mown lawn, but with almost no diversity. But why does such a complex system exist? Because it solves a fundamental human need, survival. That highway between the gut and the brain isn't an evolutionary whim. It allows your body to react quickly. If you eat something spoiled, your bacteria detect it, send an alarm signal to your brain that makes you feel disgust and discomfort, and thus you avoid poisoning yourself. It's a lightning-fast security system that has kept you safe for millennia. And the final gear at this level is the physical connection. This highway isn't a metaphor. There's a very long nerve called the vagus nerve, which runs from the brain to the abdomen. It is literally a fiber optic cable connecting your thinking brain with your intestinal second brain. Knowing this changes everything. We no longer see the gut as a simple digestive tube, but as an intelligence center that constantly communicates with your brain. So now you see, Understanding these mechanisms, these chemical factories, this highway, and this direct wiring gives us a new perspective. We are no longer passive victims of our mood or our cravings. We begin to see the gears behind the curtain, and that, my friend, is the first step towards having a little more control over ourselves. But if you thought we had everything clear, get ready, because this is where the story gets truly chaotic. Where science still debates and easy answers disappear, welcome to level 3. The first major controversy, probiotics. On one hand, you have ads promising happiness in a capsule, a yogurt that will change your life. On the other, you have many scientists saying, hold on a minute. Taking a probiotic is like parachuting a couple of soldiers into a foreign country in the middle of a civil war and expecting them to win on their own. Sometimes it works, but most of the time, the existing ecosystem is too complex and powerful. And this leads us to a myth we love to believe, that of the magic solution. The idea that a specific diet, whether keto, vegan, or paleo, will fix your microbiome and your life forever. Do you know why we like this myth so much? Because our brain hates complexity. It wants a simple rule, a clear enemy, gluten, sugar, and an easy victory. The reality, which is that each person has a unique microbiome like a fingerprint, is much harder to accept. And here comes the great paradox of our era. We know that to have a healthy microbiome, we need diversity. We need to expose ourselves to different microbes from the soil, from animals, from other people. But our entire modern society is based on the opposite, extreme hygiene. We use antibacterial gels, clean everything with bleach, and live in almost sterile environments. To be clean, we are destroying the very diversity that protects us. It's a dilemma with no easy solution. Now, a point that should make us a little uncomfortable. One of the most promising therapies for severe intestinal problems is fecal microbiota transplantation. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. Bacteria are taken from a healthy person and introduced into a sick person. It works incredibly well. But stop for a second and think about it. Are we comfortable with the idea of transferring such a fundamental part of one person's biology to another? What are the implications? Is this really right? And our view of microbes has changed radically over time. 100 years ago, the only idea was germ theory. Microbes are bad and they all need to be killed. Totalwa. Today, we are in an era of nuances, talking about the gut-brain axis and good bacteria. We've gone from seeing them as invaders to considering them perhaps as partners. How will we view this relationship in 100 years? All this connects with one of the deepest struggles of the human condition, the battle for self-control. That feeling that one part of you wants to diet, but another part pushes you towards the fridge at midnight. We've always seen it as a psychological struggle, a lack of willpower. But what if it's not just a battle in your mind? What if it's a real negotiation with a colony of beings who have their own interests? And that's the truth of level 3. The reality of the microbiome is messy, full of debates, convenient myths, and uncomfortable paradoxes. There are no single answers or magical solutions. It's a scientific and philosophical battlefield where we are still drawing the maps. All right, you've survived the chaos. You've seen the surface, the mechanisms, and the debates. Now it's time to see the details that separate the curious from the true connoisseurs. Welcome to level 4, first expert fact. We're not talking about bacteria in general. We're talking about specific species. For example, in studies with mice, it has been shown that a bacterium called Lactobacillus reuteri can increase oxytocin levels, the love hormone, and make mice more sociable. It's not something you'll find in a headline, but it's here, in the details, where the true revolution is hidden. Now, a technical detail that sounds super complex, short-chain fatty acids. Forget the name. Think of them this way. They are the language your bacteria use to talk to you. When your microbes eat the fiber you can't digest, they ferment it and produce these molecules. These fatty acids are like small text messages that travel through your blood and tell your brain, your immune system, and your organs things like all is calm or alert, there's inflammation. They are literally the words of your bacteria. And none of this is as new as it seems. At the beginning of the 20th century, a Russian scientist named Elie Mechnikov, who worked with the famous Pasteur, observed that certain populations in Bulgaria who consumed a lot of yogurt lived longer. He was the first to propose that we could improve our health by ingesting beneficial bacteria. They called him crazy, and his idea was forgotten for almost a century. He was a secret hero, a visionary who saw the future 100 years before everyone else. There's also an alternative theory, a rebel vision that goes beyond probiotics. It's the old friends hypothesis. It states that the problem isn't just the lack of good bacteria, but the lack of exposure to the enormous diversity of harmless environmental microbes from soil, water, animals with which we evolved. Our immune system expects to see these old friends to learn how to calm down. Without them, it becomes hyperactive, causing allergies and autoimmune diseases. And here's a detail that clashes with our common sense. We instinctively think of bacteria as good or bad, but science is discovering that it's not that simple. For example, a bacterium called Helicobacter pylori is famous for causing ulcers. It's the bad guy. But research suggests that having it in childhood could protect you against asthma later on. The villain, in the right context, can be a protector. Nature is not a superhero movie. And now the moment that connects everything. Remember we said bacteria produce serotonin in the gut? And do you remember the old friends theory and the need for diversity? Well, here's the connection. It's precisely certain types of those diverse bacteria, the ones we get from the environment, that are better producers of those neurotransmitters and those text messages that calm our system. It's not one thing or the other. Environmental diversity fuels the internal mechanisms that regulate your mind. Aha! Seeing this level of detail isn't just about accumulating data. It's about understanding that the world doesn't operate by simple good and bad rules. It's an incredibly complex network, a dance of influences, and having this deeper, more authentic vision is what allows us to navigate it better. We have reached the limit of what is known. We have seen the surface, the gears, the chaos, and the expert details. Do you dare to look beyond, towards the last frontier where science becomes wonder? Welcome to Level 5. Let's look to the future. Imagine a world where instead of taking an antidepressant, your doctor prescribes you a lab-designed strain of bacteria. These are psychobiotics, living microbes used to treat mental health. It's not science fiction, it's the cutting-edge research field right now. A pharmacy of the future that won't sell chemicals but life. And this leads us to the deepest question that science still cannot answer. If my microbes influence my thoughts, my emotions, and my decisions, where do they end and where do I begin? What exactly is the self? Is it just my brain? Or is it my brain in constant conversation with this internal ecosystem? The line becomes incredibly blurry. And the philosophical implication can blow your mind. Perhaps the idea that we are an individual, a singular being, is just an illusion. Modern biology is starting to use the term holobiont. You are not a human with bacteria. You are a superorganism, a walking ecosystem, a symbiosis of thousands of species functioning as a single entity. Yourself is not a thing, it is a community. Understanding this could be key to the future of humanity. Do we want to travel to Mars? We'll need to understand how the microbiome reacts to radiation and zero gravity, and perhaps design it to protect us. Do we want to solve mental health crises and autoimmune diseases? The answer might not lie in new pills, but in restoring our ancestral relationship with the microbial world. And here's the final, most provocative idea. Think about your deepest desires, the desire to succeed, to find a partner, to protect your family. We've always thought they were our evolutionary impulses. But what if they're not just ours? What if they're also the impulses of billions of microbes who, over millions of years, have learned to hack their host, you, into making decisions that ensure their own survival and propagation to the next generation? The journey has ended. We have descended through the 5 levels, and now, with this completely new perspective, it's time to look at the full picture and see how much everything has changed. At the beginning of this journey, we talked about a simple, familiar idea. Bacteria in your gut help you digest food. Now at the end, we are contemplating a dizzying idea that your very sense of self could be a negotiation with a colony of beings co-directing your deepest desires. We have moved from textbook biology to the very edge of philosophy. We have transformed a simple fact into a fundamental question about who we are. What idea from this whole journey has impacted you the most? The vagus nerve as a highway, the paradox of hygiene, or the idea that we are a superorganism? I truly want to know. Leave your thoughts in the comments. It's been an incredible pleasure exploring this with you. If you enjoy these deep dives that challenge what you think you know, subscribe and join me on the next one. Until then, keep questioning everything.